The grand ballroom of the Hilton shimmered with opulence as Jonathan Hale stood at the center of the gathering, a beacon of wealth and charisma. The evening was dedicated to raising funds for underprivileged children, a cause he was deeply passionate about. As he surveyed the elegant crowd, Jonathan felt a familiar tug of emptiness within him, a void that even the finest champagne and the soft glow of crystal chandeliers could not fill. He was a billionaire, successful beyond his wildest dreams, yet the quiet ache in his heart persisted. "Ladies and gentlemen," Jonathan began, his voice rich and resonant, cutting through the gentle hum of conversations. "Tonight, we gather not just to celebrate our achievements, but to reflect on the responsibility that comes with them. It is our duty to give back to those less fortunate, to light a path for the next generation." His words flowed with passion, igniting a spark in the audience that was palpable. The crowd erupted in applause, their admiration evident. Jonathan smiled graciously, but as he glanced around, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. He had everything a man could want: wealth, prestige, influence, but he felt like an imposter in his own life. The accolades and praise felt hollow, like a facade covering a deeper sorrow that he had long buried beneath layers of success. As the night wore on, the laughter and chatter of the gala became a distant murmur in Jonathan's mind. He excused himself from a group of admirers, seeking solace on the balcony that overlooked the bustling city below. The cool breeze brushed against his face, a refreshing reprieve from the suffocating atmosphere of the ballroom. He closed his eyes, trying to quiet the noise within. "Mr. Hale?" A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. He turned to find a young woman, her eyes bright but filled with an unspoken sadness. She was a volunteer, her name tag reading Emily. "I just wanted to thank you for your support. The kids really appreciate everything you do." Jonathan offered a warm smile. "It's my pleasure, Emily. They deserve every bit of our help." As they chatted, Jonathan felt a flicker of warmth in his heart, a reminder of why he had committed himself to philanthropy in the first place. Yet, the feeling was fleeting, overshadowed by the heaviness he carried. "Are you all right?" Emily asked, her gaze piercing through his bravado. "You seem distant." "Just lost in thought, I suppose," Jonathan replied, forcing a smile. "It's easy to get wrapped up in the glamour of it all and forget the real reason we're here." As the gala continued, Jonathan's mind drifted back to the days when he believed wholeheartedly in love and dreams. Memories of a girl named Lily danced at the edges of his consciousness. Her laughter, her unwavering belief in him, and the way her eyes sparkled with ambition. They had shared dreams of a future together, but life had a way of tearing them apart. He shook his head, trying to banish the memories that threatened to consume him. The following day, Jonathan found himself driving to a local shelter he had supported for years. It was a modest building, far from the glitz of the gala, yet it pulsed with life and hope. The children's laughter echoed in the halls, a stark contrast to the polished elegance of the previous evening. As he entered, he was greeted by familiar faces, volunteers who had dedicated their time and energy to uplifting the community. "Mr. Hale, we're so glad to see you," one of the volunteers exclaimed, leading him into the main room where children were engaged in various activities. Jonathan knelt down to speak with a group of kids, listening intently as they shared their dreams of becoming astronauts, artists, and doctors. Their innocence and optimism stirred something deep within him, a longing to be part of something greater than himself. As he moved through the shelter, Jonathan's gaze landed on a woman sitting quietly in the corner. She was framed by the soft light filtering through the window, her face partially shadowed. There was a haunting beauty about her, but it was her eyes that drew him in, deep and sorrowful, as if they held a lifetime of stories. Jonathan felt an inexplicable pull, a connection that stirred a long-dormant ache in his heart. "Excuse me," he said softly, approaching her. "I'm Jonathan. What's your name?" The woman looked up, her expression shifting from surprise to recognition. "Lily," she whispered, her voice barely audible yet charged with emotion. Jonathan's heart raced. The name echoed in his mind, unraveling a tapestry of memories he thought he had locked away. "Lily?" he repeated, incredulous. "Is it really you?" The moment hung in the air, thick with unspoken words. Lily's gaze faltered, and she quickly turned her face away, as if the weight of their shared history was too much to bear. "You shouldn't be here," she murmured, her voice trembling. "Why not?" he pressed, desperate to understand. "I want to help. I want to know how you've been." But Lily remained silent, her shoulders tense, as if bracing for a storm. Jonathan felt a pang of confusion mixed with longing. He wanted to reach out, to bridge the chasm that had formed between them over the years, but he sensed that she was guarded, locked away in a world of her own making. "Lily, please," he urged, taking a step closer. "I know things ended badly between us, but I've thought about you every day. I never forgot." She glanced at him, her eyes glistening with tears. "You should forget, Jonathan. It's safer that way." "Safer for whom?" he asked, frustration creeping into his tone. "For you? For me? We can't just pretend it didn't happen." Lily turned away, a single tear escaping down her cheek. "You don't understand," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't go back to that time. I can't. It's too painful." Jonathan's heart ached for her. He wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but the walls she had built around herself were impenetrable. "You don't have to go back alone," he said softly, willing her to see that he was still there for her, despite the years that had passed. "I'm here now. I want to help you." For a moment, the air between them crackled with possibility, but just as quickly, she turned away again, leaving him standing there, confused, intrigued, and aching to understand the woman who had once been his whole world. The shelter buzzed around him, but Jonathan felt as if time had stopped. The world outside faded away, and all that remained was the echo of Lily's name on his lips and the haunting sadness in her eyes. As he watched her retreat into the shadows, he knew that this encounter was only the beginning of a journey he could never have anticipated, a journey that would lead him to rediscover the love he thought he had lost forever. Jonathan Hale leaned back in his chair, the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. His mind raced with thoughts of the woman he had encountered at the shelter. Lily. Just the whisper of her name sent shivers down his spine, awakening emotions he had long thought buried beneath layers of ambition and success. He had spent the last few hours trying to absorb everything he had learned about her from the shelter director, a kindly woman named Marissa, who had been more than willing to share Lily's story. "Lily has been with us for several years now," Marissa had explained, her voice tinged with sadness. "She lost her job and home during a difficult time in her life. We've tried to help her as much as we can, but she keeps to herself." Jonathan felt a pang of guilt wash over him. How had he not known? He had been so consumed by his own pursuits that he had overlooked the struggles of others. As he stared out of his office window, the skyline of the city illuminated by the golden hues of the setting sun, he resolved to learn more about her, to understand the woman behind those sad eyes. The next day, he returned to the shelter, his heart racing with a mixture of anticipation and dread. He had rehearsed 100 different scenarios in his mind, yet none seemed adequate for the reality he was about to face. Jonathan stepped through the entrance, greeted by the familiar sounds of children laughing and volunteers chatting. But his gaze was immediately drawn to the garden, a small patch of greenery where he had first spotted Lily. As he approached, he saw her kneeling on the ground, tending to the flowers with a gentle touch. The sunlight caught her hair, creating a halo effect that made her look almost ethereal. For a moment, he simply watched, captivated by her grace, until she looked up, sensing his presence. Their eyes met, and in that brief moment, time seemed to stand still. "Jonathan," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Lily," he replied, taking a step closer, his heart racing. "I wanted to see you again." She stood, brushing dirt from her hands onto her jeans, her expression a mix of surprise and caution. "I didn't think you would come back." "I had to," he said, his voice steady despite the tumult of emotions swirling inside him. I wanted to talk. About yesterday." Lily hesitated, biting her lip as she glanced around the garden, as if seeking an escape. "I'm not sure there's much to say." "Please," he implored, his gaze locked onto hers. "I feel like there's a connection between us." I need to understand. With a resigned sigh, Lily nodded and motioned for him to follow her to a nearby bench. They sat in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken words. Jonathan could feel the tension radiating from her, the walls she had built around herself so evident. "I've been thinking about you a lot since yesterday," he finally said, breaking the silence. "I can't shake the feeling that I know you from somewhere." Lily's eyes flickered with emotion, but she quickly masked it. "You don't know me, Jonathan." "Not really." "Then help me," he urged. "Tell me your story." She looked away, her gaze fixed on the flowers as she took a deep breath. "I used to have a life, a good one. I had a job I loved, a small apartment that felt like home, but everything fell apart." Her voice trembled slightly. "I lost my job, and soon after, my home. I didn't know where to turn." Jonathan felt a sharp pang in his chest. "But why didn't you reach out for help? There are so many people who would have wanted to support you." "I didn't want to burden anyone," she replied, her voice steadying. "And besides, things were different back then. I didn't want anyone to see me like this." She gestured vaguely at her surroundings, her expression filled with vulnerability. "I thought I could handle it on my own." "And now?" he asked, his heart aching for her. "What do you want now, Lily?" She paused, searching his eyes as if trying to gauge his sincerity. "I don't know," she admitted finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm just trying to survive each day. I've lost so much. I don't think I can get it back." "Maybe you don't have to get everything back," Jonathan suggested gently. "Maybe we can start rebuilding together." Her expression shifted, a mixture of hope and skepticism. "You don't understand, Jonathan. I'm not the same person I was. I've changed, and not for the better." "I don't care about what you've lost," he said earnestly. "I care about who you are now, and I want to help you find your way back to yourself." Lily's eyes glistened with unshed tears, and for a moment, Jonathan thought she might break down. Instead, she turned her gaze back to the flowers, her emotions carefully guarded. "It's not that simple." "Nothing worthwhile ever is," he replied, his voice firm yet gentle. "You deserve a second chance, Lily. We all do." She finally met his gaze again, and he saw a flicker of something, a glimmer of hope, perhaps. "And what if I fail again?" "Then we try again," Jonathan said, reaching out and taking her hand in his, feeling the warmth of her skin against his. "I won't give up on you." Lily's breath hitched in her throat as she looked down at their intertwined fingers, a mix of emotions swirling within her. "You're a billionaire, Jonathan. You have a life filled with opportunities. I'm just a mess." "Money can't buy happiness or connection," he countered softly. "What I want is to be there for you, to help you rediscover your passion, your dreams. I remember how talented you were." "You remember?" she asked, her voice laced with disbelief. "Of course I do," he said, a wistful smile spreading across his face. "You had this incredible way of seeing the world, of capturing beauty in your art. I've missed that." Lily looked away, swallowing hard. "That girl is gone, Jonathan. She doesn't exist anymore." "Maybe she's still in there, waiting for a chance to come back," he suggested, his grip on her hand tightening. "Let me help you find her." Silence enveloped them as Lily considered his words. The garden around them was alive with the sounds of nature, a stark contrast to the turmoil within her. She wanted to believe him, to trust that there was still a part of her that could rise from the ashes of her past. Finally, she whispered, "What do you want from me?" "I want to be your friend," he replied, his voice steady. "I want to support you in whatever way you need." She met his gaze, searching for sincerity and finding it. "And if I can't be the person you remember, then we'll create a new version of ourselves together," Jonathan said, his heart racing with hope. "All I ask is the chance to try." Lily felt a warmth spread through her, the walls around her heart slowly beginning to crack. As she squeezed his hand, she knew that perhaps, just perhaps, there was a glimmer of hope on the horizon, a chance for healing and rediscovery that she had long since thought was impossible. As they sat on the garden bench, the sun filtering through the leaves above them, Jonathan watched Lily closely. Her fingers played nervously with the hem of her sweater, a sign of the tension that hung in the air between them. The initial awkwardness of their reconnection had given way to something deeper, a shared history that weighed heavily on both their hearts. "I never expected to see you here," Jonathan said, breaking the silence. His voice was soft, almost reverent, as if he were afraid to disturb the fragile moment they were sharing. Lily glanced away, her sad eyes reflecting a myriad of emotions. "I didn't expect to see you either. It's been a long time." She hesitated, her voice barely above a whisper. "I thought you'd forgotten about me." "Forget you?" He shook his head vehemently. "I could never forget you, Lily. You were everything to me." He paused, searching her face for a flicker of recognition. "But I've heard things about how you've been living here. The shelter, it's not fair." At the mention of the shelter, a shadow crossed Lily's features. "It's not what you think. I didn't plan for any of this. Losing my job, my home." She inhaled sharply, the words catching in her throat. "It's just a series of unfortunate events, you know? One after another until I found myself here." Jonathan's heart ached for her. "But what happened, Lily? I want to understand. You don't have to go through this alone." He reached out, placing a gentle hand over hers, grounding her in the moment. She flinched at his touch, then slowly relaxed, allowing the warmth of his palm to seep into her skin. After everything fell apart, I lost my way." Her voice was thick with emotion, and Jonathan could see the tears welling in her eyes. "I tried to make it work on my own, but it was like I was fighting a losing battle. I lost my job at the gallery, and without that, I lost my passion. Everything spiraled from there." Jonathan's chest tightened at the thought of her struggling in silence. "I had no idea. I thought you were doing okay. You were always so strong, so full of life." "That was before," she replied softly, pulling her hand away as if she were afraid of what his touch might reveal. "After you left, I felt like a part of me died. I didn't know how to keep going." The weight of her words hung between them, heavy with the past and the myriad possibilities of what might have been. Jonathan swallowed hard, his throat dry. "I wish I had known. I never wanted to hurt you, Lily. I thought you'd be better off without me." Lily looked up, her gaze piercing through the veil of sadness. "You didn't hurt me. Life did. We both made choices that led us here. I just didn't expect to be left with the pieces to pick up on my own." "Maybe it's not too late," he suggested, his voice firm with conviction. "Maybe we can help each other put those pieces back together." A flicker of hope crossed her face, but it was quickly overshadowed by doubt. "You don't understand, Jonathan. I'm not the same person I was. I don't know if I can ever be that person again." "Then let's discover who you are now," he urged, leaning closer. "Let me help you, Lily. I want to be here for you. Let's start small. Maybe over coffee? We can share stories, memories, anything." Lily hesitated, the walls she had built around her heart trembling at the prospect of companionship. "Coffee?" she echoed, as if the concept were foreign to her now. "Yeah, just a casual coffee. No expectations, just two old friends catching up." He smiled gently, hoping to ease the tension. "What do you say?" After a moment of silence, she sighed, her defenses crumbling ever so slightly. "I suppose I could do that." A smile broke across Jonathan's face, a genuine light that filled the space between them. "Great. There's a little cafe just down the street from here. They make the best lattes." "Lattes?" Lily's brow furrowed in confusion. "I used to love those." "Then it's settled," Jonathan exclaimed, his excitement bubbling over. "Let's relive the past a little, shall we?" Just as they began to stand, Lily's phone rang sharply, cutting through the fragile bubble of their moment. She fumbled in her pocket, her expression shifting from joy to anxiety as she glanced at the screen. I have to take this," she said, her voice suddenly distant. Jonathan nodded, masking his disappointment. "Of course. I understand." She stepped away, answering the call with a forced smile that quickly faded. "Hello? Yes, this is Lily." Her voice was professional, almost rehearsed, as she moved a few paces away, leaving Jonathan to stand alone, his heart racing with uncertainty. He watched her as she spoke, her body tense, her brow furrowed. He could only catch snippets of the conversation. Words like urgent and schedule pierced through the air. His heart sank as he realized the brief moment of connection they had shared was slipping away, replaced by the harsh reality of her life. After a few moments, she ended the call, her face pale and troubled. "I'm sorry, Jonathan. I really need to go. Something came up at the shelter." "Of course," he replied, trying to mask his disappointment. "I understand. We can reschedule. Just let me know when you're free." Lily nodded, a look of regret washing over her. "I really wanted to talk more. I just have to handle this." Jonathan stepped forward, his voice low and earnest. "Lily, please take care of yourself. I'm here for you, whenever you're ready." She offered a small smile, a flicker of the woman he once knew, before she turned to leave. "Thank you, Jonathan. I'll reach out soon. I promise." As she walked away, Jonathan felt a mix of hope and despair. He knew the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, but the spark of connection they had ignited was undeniable. He was determined to help her rise from the ashes of her past, to show her that she was not alone. With a deep breath, he resolved to wait for her call. He would not let her slip away again, not when there was so much left unsaid, so much left to explore. Jonathan knew that this was just the beginning of their journey, one filled with uncertainties, but also with the promise of rediscovery and healing. Jonathan Hale sat in his office late at night, the city lights twinkling like distant stars through the floor-to-ceiling windows. His mind was swirling with thoughts of Lily, the woman he had encountered at the shelter. The shadows of their shared past loomed large, and he felt a compelling need to learn more about her. The glimpses he had caught of her life, the sadness etched in her features, the way her eyes had flickered with recognition, had ignited a fire within him. He had to understand what had happened to her, how life had led her to such a painful place. He pulled out his laptop and began typing, searching for any information he could find on Lily. He quickly discovered her last name, Anderson, and was surprised to learn that she had once been a promising artist. As he delved deeper, he came across articles highlighting her early work, showcasing vibrant paintings that spoke of hope and beauty. But, as he scrolled further, the tone shifted. The articles turned to whispers of tragedy. Her family had faced unimaginable loss, and Lily herself had been the subject of speculation regarding her mental health. Jonathan's heart sank as he read about her struggles, how the death of her parents had left her adrift, how she had slipped into a depression that robbed her of her passion and purpose. He could hardly reconcile the radiant artist in those earlier articles with the woman he had met at the shelter. The disconnect was jarring. He felt a wave of guilt wash over him, realizing how oblivious he had been to her suffering while he had been building his empire. "Lily," he whispered to himself, the name tasting bittersweet on his tongue. He remembered the way she had looked at him, a mixture of hope and despair, as if she was simultaneously reaching out for him and pulling away. He could still hear her soft voice, barely above a whisper, saying his name. It felt like a lifeline thrown into turbulent waters, and he was determined to grasp it. The next day, Jonathan returned to the shelter, his heart racing with anticipation. He had a plan, an idea he hoped would help Lily regain her footing. As he entered, he was greeted by the familiar faces of children playing in the common area, their laughter a stark contrast to the gravity of his thoughts. He scanned the room, searching for her. He found her in the garden, sitting on a weathered bench surrounded by vibrant flowers, a stark contrast to her somber demeanor. The sun filtered through the leaves, casting dappled shadows on her face, accentuating the fine lines of worry etched there. She looked lost in thought, her gaze fixed on the ground. "Lily," he called softly, approaching her. She looked up, her expression a mix of surprise and trepidation. "Jonathan," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. "Mind if I join you?" he asked, gesturing to the empty space beside her. She hesitated, then nodded, her eyes darting away as he settled next to her. "I wanted to talk," he began, searching for the right words. "I've been thinking a lot about you, about everything." Lily sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly. "I don't know if there's much to say. I'm not the person you remember." "Maybe not," he acknowledged. but I believe there's still a part of you that's in there, waiting to be found. I want to help you find it." She turned to him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "Help? Why would you want to do that?" "I'm just a—" "Stop," he interrupted gently, taking her hands in his. "You're not just anything. You were an incredible artist, and I can see that spark in you still. I want to help you get back on your feet, to reclaim your art." Lily pulled her hands away, a flash of anger momentarily crossing her features. "You don't understand. I've lost everything. How can I just pick up the pieces? It's not that simple." Jonathan felt a pang of frustration, but tempered it with empathy. "I know it's not simple, but I believe in you, Lily. I believe you have the strength to rise above this." "I don't feel strong," she admitted, her voice trembling. "I feel broken. It's been years since I've picked up a brush. What if I can't do it? What if I fail?" "Then we'll figure it out together," he said, his tone resolute. "You won't be alone in this. I want to support you, no matter what it takes." Lily looked down, her brow furrowed in contemplation. "Why are you doing this? You have your life, your success. I'm just a shadow of what I used to be." Jonathan felt a surge of determination. "Because I care about you, Lily. I've never stopped caring. Not since the day he faltered, the weight of their shared history hanging heavily in the air. "Please don't," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I can't go back to that place. It hurts too much." "I understand," he said softly, "but running from the past won't heal the wounds. You need to confront them. Let me help you." For a moment, silence enveloped them. The garden buzzed with life around them, but in that moment, it felt like they were cocooned in a world of their own. Finally, Lily spoke, her voice barely a whisper. "What do you suggest?" Jonathan took a deep breath, feeling a glimmer of hope. "We could start with an art class, or maybe an exhibition of your past work. Something to reignite your passion. I believe there are people out there who would love to see your talent again." Lily's expression shifted, uncertainty clouding her features. "An exhibition? I don't think I'm ready for that. What if no one likes it? What if they judge me?" "Then they'll be missing out on something beautiful," Jonathan replied, his eyes earnest. "And I'll be right by your side, cheering you on. You deserve this chance, Lily." Her gaze softened, but doubt still lingered in her eyes. "I don't know. Let's take it one step at a time," he urged. "You don't have to commit to anything today. Just think about it." Lily nodded slowly, but he could see the conflict warring within her. "Okay, I'll think about it," she said finally, though her tone lacked conviction. Jonathan reached for her hand again, and this time, she didn't pull away. "That's all I ask. Just give yourself a chance." As they sat together in the garden, the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden light over them. Lily's eyes glimmered with unshed tears, and Jonathan felt an overwhelming urge to comfort her. He wanted to erase the pain etched on her face, to remind her of the dreams they once shared. "Lily," he said, his voice low and sincere, "I want you to know that you're not alone anymore. Whatever you're facing, I'll be here to support you." For a fleeting moment, a flicker of hope ignited in her eyes, but just as quickly, it dimmed. "What if I can't forgive myself for everything that's happened? What if I'm not worthy of a second chance?" "Everyone deserves a second chance, especially someone as talented and beautiful as you," Jonathan replied, his gaze unwavering. "You're worth it. No matter what has happened in the past, it doesn't define who you are today." Lily looked away, her emotions swirling within her. "I want to believe that," she whispered, "but it's hard." "I know it is," Jonathan said gently, "but I believe in you, and I'll be here every step of the way. Just promise me you'll try." She nodded slowly, the weight of his words settling in her heart. "I'll try," she echoed, her voice barely audible. As they sat in silence, Jonathan felt a sense of determination surge within him. He would not only help Lily rediscover her passion for art, but also help her reclaim her life. He could sense that they were on the brink of something beautiful, a journey of rediscovery and healing that would change both of their lives forever. But as he watched the last rays of sunlight fade, he couldn't shake the feeling that there was still a deeper truth lurking beneath the surface of her pain, something she had yet to share. He resolved to be patient, to let her reveal her story when she was ready, but he also knew that whatever it was, they would face it together. The soft glow of the gallery lights bathed the room in a warm ambience as guests mingled, glasses clinking and laughter rising like a gentle tide. Jonathan Hale stood at the entrance, surveying the scene with a mixture of pride and anxiety. The art exhibition he had organized to showcase Lily's work was finally underway, and he could feel the weight of expectations pressing down on him. He wanted this night to be a turning point for her, a chance to reignite the passion she once had for painting and to share her story with the world. As he watched Lily interact with a small group of attendees, Jonathan couldn't help but admire her grace. She wore a simple yet elegant dress, the color complementing her auburn hair, which cascaded down her shoulders in soft waves. Yet despite her outward beauty, he could see the flicker of anxiety in her eyes, the way she fidgeted with her bracelet as she spoke. He approached her, hoping to provide some encouragement. "Hey," he said softly, leaning in so only she could hear. "You're doing great. Everyone is really enjoying your work." Lily turned to him, her expression a blend of gratitude and apprehension. I can't shake this feeling that I don't belong here. What if they don't like it?" Her voice trembled slightly, betraying her nerves. Jonathan reached out, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You belong here more than anyone. Your art is incredible, and it speaks volumes about your experiences. Trust me, they'll see that." Taking a deep breath, Lily nodded, though her gaze drifted back to the crowd, worry etched on her face. Jonathan felt a pang of empathy. He understood the demons she battled daily. As they stood together, he could sense the unspoken connection between them, their shared history lingering just beneath the surface, waiting for the right moment to resurface. As the night wore on, more guests arrived, and the energy in the gallery grew. Jonathan watched as people admired Lily's paintings, their expressions shifting from curiosity to awe. Each piece told a story, a fragment of her life captured in strokes of color that revealed both her pain and her resilience. Yet, just as Jonathan was about to approach her again, he noticed a figure entering the gallery, a man with a familiar face, one that made Lily stiffen visibly. "Jonathan," she whispered, her eyes widening. "It's Mark." Jonathan turned to see Lily's estranged brother, Mark, standing at the entrance, surveying the room with an expression of disdain. The air around them seemed to thicken, tension crackling like electricity. Jonathan's heart raced. He had heard snippets of Lily's troubled relationship with her brother, but seeing him here, uninvited and unexpected, felt like a storm brewing on the horizon. "Stay here," Jonathan said, his voice firm yet gentle. "I'll handle it." As he approached Mark, the man's eyes narrowed, and a smirk danced on his lips. "So, this is what you've been up to, Lily? Hiding behind your little paintings while the world moves on without you." His tone dripped with sarcasm, and Jonathan felt a surge of protectiveness for Lily. "Mark, this isn't the place for this," Jonathan interjected, stepping between them. "Lily has worked incredibly hard for this exhibition. She deserves to celebrate her achievements, not to be berated." Mark scoffed, crossing his arms. "What would you know about her? You swoop in like a knight in shining armor, but you don't understand the real story. She's had it easy while the rest of us have had to deal with the aftermath of her choices." The words hung in the air, heavy with accusation. Jonathan could feel Lily's eyes on him, waiting for his response, but he held his ground. "You don't get to dictate how she feels about her past. Lily has fought her battles, and she's here tonight because she wants to reclaim her life." Mark's expression soured, and Jonathan could see the internal struggle within him. "You don't know what you're talking about. She's a coward who ran away when things got tough. She abandoned us." Jonathan sensed the raw pain behind Mark's words, but he refused to let him demean Lily any further. "You don't understand what she's been through, do you? You haven't been there for her when she needed you most. She's here, standing tall in front of everyone, and that's a victory in itself." The confrontation drew the attention of several guests, and Jonathan could feel the weight of their stares. He turned to Lily, who stood at a distance, her expression a mix of hurt and confusion. He wanted to reach out to her, to reassure her that she was not alone in this moment. "Lily," Mark called, his voice cutting through the tension. "You can't hide forever. We need to talk." "I don't want to talk to you," she replied, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "You left me when I needed you, and now you show up here, acting like you care?" Mark took a step closer, his face softening slightly. "You don't understand. Things have been difficult for all of us. I didn't want to abandon you. I thought you'd be better off without the mess of our family." Lily shook her head, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "You don't get to decide what's best for me. I had to learn to survive on my own, and it wasn't easy." "Maybe I was wrong," Mark admitted, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "But we can't keep pretending that everything is fine. There's something you need to know." The gallery fell silent, all eyes on the siblings as Jonathan felt the tension reach its peak. He stepped forward, ready to intervene if necessary. "Whatever it is, it can wait until after tonight. This is Lily's moment. Let her have it." Mark glanced at Jonathan, and for a fleeting moment, Jonathan saw uncertainty in his eyes. But then he turned back to Lily. "No, it can't wait. It's about our family, about the inheritance. You deserve to know the truth." The revelation hung in the air, heavy and foreboding. Lily's expression shifted, confusion replacing the hurt. "Inheritance? What are you talking about?" Mark took a deep breath, clearly conflicted. "Our parents left behind a significant amount of money, assets, things you never knew about. I was supposed to tell you, but I didn't know how. I thought you were better off without it, without the burden." Lily's breath hitched, and Jonathan could see her world start to tilt. "You mean, all this time, I could have had a chance to rebuild my life?" Mark nodded, his face etched with regret. "I should have been there for you. I should have told you sooner, but I thought it was for the best." Jonathan felt the air thicken with the weight of Mark's confession. Lily seemed to shrink in on herself, processing this new reality that threatened to upend everything she thought she knew about her past. "Why didn't you just reach out?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper, the hurt evident in her tone. "You left me to fend for myself, and now you're here, talking about money like it could fix everything." "I know it doesn't change the past," Mark replied, his voice earnest, "but it's a start. We could figure this out together. I want to make things right." As the tension hung thick in the air, Jonathan stepped closer to Lily, offering silent support. He could see the struggle within her, the conflict between the pain of their past and the glimmer of hope that this new revelation could bring. "Lily," he said gently, "you don't have to decide anything right now. You have the power to choose how to move forward, whether it's with him or without." She looked at Jonathan, her eyes searching for clarity in the chaos. I don't know what to feel right now." Mark's expression softened, the anger dissipating as he reached out, his voice filled with sincerity. "I want to help you, Lily. I know I messed up, but I'm here now. Please, let's figure this out together." As the gallery buzzed with whispers and speculation, Jonathan felt the weight of the night pressing down on them. He had wanted this exhibition to be a celebration, a fresh start for Lily, but now it had morphed into a confrontation of past choices and unspoken truths. Lily took a step back, her gaze darting between Mark and Jonathan. "I need time to think," she finally said, her voice steady despite the turmoil brewing within her. Mark nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. "Take your time. I'll be around when you're ready." As he walked away, the silence that followed felt deafening. Jonathan turned to Lily, who looked lost, yet a flicker of determination sparkled behind her eyes. "I never expected this to happen tonight," she murmured, her voice trembling. "Neither did I," Jonathan replied softly, taking her hand in his. "But whatever you decide, I'm here for you. You're not alone in this." Lily looked up at him, her expression a mixture of gratitude and uncertainty. "Thank you, Jonathan. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm glad you're here." With the night still unfolding around them, Jonathan knew that this was just the beginning of a new chapter for both of them. A chapter filled with challenges, but also with the possibility of healing and redemption. As they stood together, hand in hand, he felt a renewed sense of Lily stood in her small room at the shelter, the muted colors of her artwork lining the walls like silent witnesses to her journey. The recent art exhibition had stirred something deep within her, hope, excitement, and an undercurrent of dread. Jonathan had been a pillar of support, a beacon in her otherwise darkened world. Yet each passing moment filled her with an undeniable fear of losing him again. She glanced at the door, half expecting him to walk in with that warm smile that made her heart race. Instead, she felt the weight of solitude pressing down on her. "Lily?" Jonathan's voice broke through the silence, and she turned to see him standing in the doorway, a small envelope in his hand. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "No, not at all," she replied, trying to mask the nervous tremor in her voice. "What's that you have there?" "It's a letter I found in one of your paintings," he said, stepping inside and gently closing the door behind him. "I didn't mean to pry, but it was addressed to me." He held it out, his expression a mix of curiosity and concern. A rush of anxiety coursed through her. She had hidden that letter, buried deep within the layers of her canvas, hoping it would remain undiscovered. It contained feelings she had never shared, confessions of a heart that had been shattered and pieced back together only in fragments. "Jonathan, she began, but he interrupted her. "Please, just let me read it," he insisted, his voice steady yet filled with a hint of vulnerability. He opened the envelope and unfolded the letter, his eyes scanning the familiar handwriting. As he read, the atmosphere shifted. A palpable tension enveloped them. "Lily, you wrote about how much you missed me, how you felt lost without me. You talked about the dreams we had." His brow furrowed as he continued reading, a flicker of recognition sparking in his eyes. "You said you felt guilty for what happened. What did you mean by that?" Lily's heart raced, and the color drained from her face. This was it, the moment she had both dreaded and yearned for. She took a deep breath, struggling to find her voice. "Jonathan, there's something I never told you. Something I kept hidden, because I thought it would break you." He looked up, his gaze piercing. "What is it, Lily?" "I was pregnant when we broke up," she whispered, her voice almost lost amidst the tumult of emotions. "I didn't know how to tell you. I thought you would hate me for it. I was scared and alone, and I lost the baby shortly after." Jonathan's expression shifted from confusion to shock, then to something deeper, a mixture of sorrow and understanding. "You were pregnant?" Tears welled in her eyes as she nodded, a torrent of pain flooding back to her. "I thought you'd never forgive me, that I'd ruined everything. I spiraled into this darkness, and I felt like I was drowning. I never wanted you to know because I didn't want to burden you with my pain." Jonathan took a step toward her, the letter crumpling slightly in his grasp. "You weren't a burden, Lily. You were my everything. I never stopped thinking about you, about us. If I had known..." His voice trailed off, the weight of unspoken words hanging in the air. "And what would you have done?" she challenged, her voice shaky but resolute. "You were on the brink of your career, a billionaire with a bright future. You wouldn't have wanted to be tied down by my mistakes. I would have wanted to be there for you, to support you, to share that burden with you," he said, his voice rising slightly. "You were never meant to go through any of this alone." Lily felt the walls she had built around her heart start to crumble. The truth hung between them, heavy yet liberating. "I didn't know how to reach out for help. I thought I could handle it, but I couldn't. I lost myself, Jonathan. I lost everything." He reached for her, his fingers brushing against hers, igniting a spark of connection that had been absent for so long. "You don't have to lose yourself anymore. We can face this together. You're not alone, Lily." She searched his eyes, looking for the sincerity she desperately needed. "But what if I'm too broken? What if we can't go back to how things were?" Jonathan shook his head, his determination unwavering. "We can't go back, but we can move forward. Together. I want to help you heal, to rediscover who you are. You're still the passionate artist I fell in love with. That hasn't changed." "But what about the child?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I can't change what happened. I can't take it back." "No, you can't. But you can honor that memory. You can create again, Lily. You have a chance to build a new life, with me by your side." Her heart swelled at his words, the warmth of hope battling against the chill of her fears. "I want to, Jonathan. I really do. But I don't know if I deserve it." "Don't say that," he urged, his voice softening. You deserve every chance to find happiness. Remember the dreams we had? We can still chase them together." As the gravity of their shared past hung in the air, Lily felt a flicker of determination ignite within her. "Okay," she said, her voice steadier now. "I'll try. For us." Jonathan smiled, a genuine warmth flooding his features. "That's all I ask. Let's take this one step at a time. We'll figure it out together." Just then, a knock on the door interrupted their moment. It was Mark, Lily's estranged brother, standing there with uncertainty etched across his face. "Lily, can we talk?" She exchanged a glance with Jonathan, a mixture of fear and anticipation swirling within her. This was the moment she had dreaded, the confrontation that could either mend or shatter the fragile bond they were beginning to rebuild. "Of course," she replied, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside her. "I'll be right there." Jonathan squeezed her hand gently, a silent reminder of their connection, a promise to stand beside her through whatever lay ahead. "I'll be waiting," he said softly, his eyes filled with unwavering support. As she opened the door, Lily felt a surge of courage. She was ready to face the past, to confront the pain, and to reclaim her life. With Jonathan by her side, she could finally begin to heal, to rebuild the future she had once thought lost forever. If you enjoyed this heartwarming story about overcoming challenges and family love, don't forget to like the video, comment on what touched you the most, and subscribe to the channel. Stay tuned for our next exciting story.